Hello, I want to welcome everyone to tonight's video. Um, for those of you who do not know me, my name is Dr. Schluentz. I am a practicing dentist in Hendersonville, North Carolina, which is just south of Asheville, which is a beautiful place. If you've never been there, you should come visit. And I started a coaching program just this year. So the nature of the talk today is just to talk to you about the results we want in life and how we can get them. And so I want you to first think about what brings you to watch this video today. Whether you're watching it in the comfort of your own home in the morning, in the afternoon, at night, just really think about what messages that you heard about me and my coaching program that allowed you to think that this was a good video to watch. And I want you to think about those things, and I want you to evaluate your life. And as we go through this today, you might get more questions than answers, and that's a good thing. And so I want you to think about those questions, and if this message resonates with you, and if this is something that you feel pretty deeply about, at the end of this presentation, we'll talk to you about what the next step would be. A little bit about me. I attended Albion College, which is a small school up in Michigan, in the kind of central part of the state. I was, as you know, I was trained as a dentist, and so I was able to escape Michigan and come down to North Carolina for dental school. University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill was one of the dental schools I really, really wanted to get into, and I was fortunate enough to get into the program and escape the Michigan winters and just decided I never wanted to go back. And so when I graduated from dental school, I immediately became a dental associate. I had a lot of student debt and I needed to get a job. And so I worked as an associate for a year in Greensboro, North Carolina, which is kind of the central part of the state. And what I discovered was that I really didn't like doing dentistry the way I was doing dentistry as an associate. I was seeing a tremendous amount of patients in a given day. I'd see 30 or 40 different individuals, and I would do a filling here, a crown there, a filling here, a filling there. And what I was discovering was I wasn't creating any type of lasting relationship with these patients that I was working with. And after about a year, I felt really sick. And I knew that as a dentist, if I was going to do this for the rest of my life, I'd end up quitting because you just couldn't work that way. And so I just decided I was going to buy a practice, and I bought a practice from a gentleman, Dr. David Chapman, in Hendersonville, North Carolina, and he had been with this practice. He had founded it himself, and he had been with the practice for 40 years. And he was deciding it was time for him to retire, and I purchased the practice and renamed it Mountain Sky Dental because I didn't want to call it Schluentz Family Dental because no one would be able to say that. And it was dental nirvana for about 3 months. And then what I realized was that the practice was still getting me the same type of results I was getting as a dental associate, even though the practice was different. It was still the same structure. So I went through a process in which I started to create a more humanistic, wellness-oriented dental practice. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And Mountain Sky Coaching was founded in 2016, and you know, the program that I use is called Thinking into Results, which is a program that was created by Bob Proctor and Sandy Gallagher. And I also still serve as a mentor for the Schuster Center, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. And the Schuster Center, for all intents and purposes, is a place that dentists can go to learn how to create a practice that more represents who they are as people. So my journey to coaching and really to help people get the results they're looking for in life was an extension of my dental practice. And so, you know, as I go through my story and what got me to this point in my career, a lot of it stems from my experience as a dentist and helping, you know, my patients get what they want, and seeing that helping getting patients what they want is a common thing that a lot of people are looking for results they're not getting in life. And so, as I was going through as an associate, and even in the beginning parts of my practice life when I had my own practice, I was realizing that the results my patients were looking for were not the results I was able to get for them. And so I had to create a whole new structure in terms of how I was going to help my patients get the results. And the saying is always, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, this was my first mentor and teacher, Dr. Michael Schuster. And the Schuster Center is a business school for dentists. And what the Schuster Center allowed me to do, and dentists that would go through the center, it allowed me to slow my practice down and my life down to a point where I could begin to analyze what I wanted for my practice. Most dentists are so busy drilling, filling, and billing that they lose sight of why they're there to begin with, which is to help their patients get what the patients want. And so the Schuster Center allows dentists to slow down that process and start to, by nature, create a practice that more represents who the dentist is and what the dentist believes, and also allows the patients to get more of what they want. So it becomes more of a humanistic wellness style practice just by nature. And so the Schuster Center allowed me to really start digging into personal growth and development, because that's the first thing you have to work on. If you don't work on yourself, nothing else is going to happen. So I started with the center in 2014, January 2014, and the first three things that they made us read as students was these three books. One was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So anybody that is involved with the idea of personal growth and development knows that Think and Grow Rich is kind of the Bible. And most things that you see in personal growth and development today stems from Think and Grow Rich, whether it's The Secret, whether it's a lot of different Tony Robbins. A lot of those things come from this book and the ideas that were presented in this book. Another book that Dr. Schuster had me read was Psychocybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. Now, psychocybernetics, I think, really touches at the heart of why most people don't change and don't get the results they want. And Dr. Maltz was actually a plastic surgeon. So Dr. Maltz would see these patients and he would help them go through this massive shift in appearance. So, a lot of patients had disfiguring scars, etc. And what he found was when he fixed the scars, most people had a completely different outlook on who they were as a person. But what really interested Dr. Maltz was that some people didn't get that massive change, and they still viewed themselves as that ugly, disfigured, hideous person that they thought they were, even though now the scars and the disfigurement were gone. And so he started to really dig into why that happens. And what he discovered was that most people have an image of themselves, and we call it a self-image. And that self-image, until that self-image changes, nothing in their life is going to change. So the idea of cybernetics is basically we have this control mechanism on the inside of us, almost like a thermostat. And if we deviate too far from our self-image, we'll return back to that state that our self-image believes us to be in. It was a fascinating book. And then the last one, I think almost everybody has heard of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And this book really allowed me to start to look at how do I make lasting change, and how is permanent change, a part of who we are. And so these three books really opened my eyes to what personal growth and development could do for me. And so I got really knee deep into my dental practice. And I was taking off from a dental standpoint. I think the dental practice was becoming more and more of what I wanted it to be. But something still wasn't quite right. And so my life, I felt, was getting more and more out of balance. So my practice was taking off, but my personal life was suffering. And I know that that's something that we all struggle with, is that you feel like you are tugged in multiple directions. So my professional life was starting to take up all my time, and my personal relationships were suffering. My relationships with my family were suffering. And I knew that this is a path that most go down, and it ends up in divorce or ruin. And I didn't want that to happen. So I knew I needed to change something and quick. I just didn't know how. Well, mentor part two came in my life, and this is Bob Proctor and Sandy Gallagher. And Bob Proctor, especially, his teachings, I were introduced to his teachings on YouTube and his program, You Were Born Rich. And really, his teachings were an extension of Think and Grow Rich. So when I was going through the process, I had read Think and Grow Rich, I had read Psycho-Cybernetics, I had absorbed the material, but I wasn't applying the material. I wasn't becoming part of the material. I didn't use it in my daily life. And whatever you don't use, you lose. And so Bob Proctor allowed me to retouch with some of these ideas and concepts that I should have been using in my life. I just never did. And so his philosophy is basically based on the law of attraction. And so I want to kind of clarify some things about the law of attraction, because you may have some notions about what that means. If you've seen the movie The Secret. Well, The Secret says it's based on the law of attraction, but the law of attraction can be so simplified in thinking your thoughts become things. So whatever you think about, you become. Well, there's much more to it than that. And we're going to dig into some of that today. But just be aware that just because you think something doesn't mean that it becomes a reality. So if I sat and thought I was going to become a penguin, I'm not going to become a penguin, because I don't believe that I can become a penguin. And there's some serious limitations to just thinking that thoughts alone are going to become a physical manifestation in your life. There's much more to it, but there is a great element of truth to that. It's thoughts mixed with emotions that start to become a driving force to get what we want in life. Okay? And so what Bob allowed me to do was really begin to think about how I could create the life I wanted. And I already had some of the foundation at the Schuster Center, but Bob said, hey, it's possible for you to get what you want in life. Life doesn't have to be so difficult. You don't have to only dedicate your time to your professional life. You can have what you truly want. And so I learned that from Bob. And Sandy Gallagher helped co-create this process of thinking into results, which I'm going to talk to you about today. So let me give you a little bit of background about Bob Proctor. So he had been doing this now for 55 years. And Bob grew up with no formal education, so he quit school at a very early age. And he bounced from job to job, and he finally discovered a job he really liked. He was working in a firehouse. And so he was going through life, and he thought that this was a cushy job, and this was great. But he started to analyze his life, and he realized he was only making $4,000 a year, and this was back in the 60s. He was making $4,000 a year, but he owed $6,000 total. So if you do the math, it means he has to work for a year and a half just to pay down debt without having anything to live by. And he knew that that situation was untenable. And so he discovered his first mentor, Ray Stanford. And Ray gave him a book called Think and Grow Rich, which we just talked about. And he said, Napoleon Hill dedicated his life to writing this book. If you want to be successful, you should dedicate your life to reading and absorbing and using the concepts that are found in the book. And so Bob did that. And what Bob found out is that within 1 year, his income went from $4,000 a year to $175,000. Now this is back in the 60s. That's a lot of money. And within 4 years, he made over $1 million a year. And he did it by cleaning offices. He had office cleaning businesses set up in London, Canada, Atlanta, New York, you name it. He had a business in those major locations. And so when Bob discovered that he could use Think and Grow Rich and it would change his life so dramatically, he spent the next 9.5 years of his life trying to figure out how that happened. And what he discovered is what he teaches now. Now, what he really started to discover was that most people can relate to these 3 lifestyle desires. And so I want you to think about this. Are these things that you want in your life? Do you want to be free of financial concerns? What Bob discovered is that most people don't want to be so ridiculously wealthy that they're in the news constantly. But they do want to be so wealthy that they're not worrying about financial concerns. If you want something, you can go get it and not have to worry about where the money's going to come from. Okay? The next thing that he discovered most people want is they want to wake up enthused about what they're going to do that day. And then the third thing he discovered is that most people want to spend time with people who have a great attitude, are upbeat about life, and are creatively productive. So these three things I think are really common to most people. The sad part is most people aren't doing any of these three things. And I was no different. So I had a practice that was successful, but when I started looking at my life, I discovered that I was going to have to work a really long time in order for me to be financially independent. Now, I know some people don't mind that. That doesn't resonate well with me. I want to be doing something I enjoy doing, I look forward to doing. Like what I'm doing right now, I look forward to doing this. I want to become financially independent by helping other people. And I want to spend time with people that love what they do and are creatively productive. And in my practice, and I love my patients are fantastic, but what I discovered is a lot of patients hate seeing the dentist, so they don't like being there. So I wasn't getting people that were in my office that wanted to create health. I was getting people that were annoyed that they had to see a dentist. And as a result, that weighed on myself and my staff. And I said, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why would I have a practice where everybody doesn't want to see me? And why would I have to work for 40 years in that environment to be financially independent? And I'm sure as heck not going to be happy working in that environment every day, because how can you possibly enjoy that? And so even though on the face of it, it looked like it was a successful practice, it wasn't helping me get any of those three things. And I said, something needs to change. And this quote from Steve Jobs on the right sums it up perfectly. My inside, my emotions, my gut was telling me something that was being drowned out by other opinions. You know, when I talk to a lot of individuals about what I wanted to create with my practice and my life, they'd say, "Well, that can't happen. You gotta put in the time. You gotta spend, your 40 years, and then you'll get the freedom of retirement." But what I discovered is most people that are in my office that did that and took that path, when they did finally decide to retire, a lot of them are asking, "What do I do now? Is this all there is? Why did I work 40 years for this?" I did not want that to be the case, and I don't want that to be the case for you that are listening to this. And Bob Proctor's program with Sandy Gallagher changed my life. And the program is called Thinking into Results. And I'm going to talk to you about why it's so impactful and why I think it's different than anything on the market today. And when I went through this, I said, I really want to spend a lot of my time teaching this to others, because this information needs to become available. And it's not information we get in school. And we're going to talk so much about that. Okay? So I want you to think about these two questions. One, why do we struggle to get the results we want in life? Most people want something. They just can't get it. And I want to ask you, why do you think that is? And we're going to touch on that. And then two, why don't we realize more of our true potential? So I've always found this question so fascinating, because we use roughly 5% of our brain. And my question was always, why do we have such a fascinating and complex brain if we don't use it? And what is it there for? And why do we not begin to tap more into what we're capable of becoming? So one thing that we can talk about is the nature of goal setting, and how can we tap into more of the results we want. And really, goal setting is so simple. It's knowing where you're at, knowing where you want to go, and these little arrows going up to my goals is action steps to go from where we're at to where we want to go. Now here's where the heart of the matter is. If goal achieving is so simple and so easy, why are so many people stuck doing it? What happens here? And so let's dig into this a little bit. I think most would argue that the reason that most people get stuck is they don't have a clearly defined goal. And there's some element of truth to this. Your goal has to have a certain type of structure to it or it won't be achievable. It cannot be ambiguous. It needs to be crystal clear. If you say, I want to make a lot of money, you're not going to get that. What you really have to say is, I want $1 million of income in the next calendar year. It gives you from an X to Y by when. So you're going from 0 to $1 million in 1 year. If you just say, I want to have a lot of money, that's never going to happen because it's not clearly defined. I don't think that's the reason that most people get stuck. I think the reason that most people get stuck is because they're stuck with their paradigms. Well, we need to ask, what the heck is a paradigm? Because you may have never heard that. You may have heard a paradigm shift, but you may not have ever dug into what a paradigm actually is. So a paradigm is a mental program that has almost exclusive control over our habitual behavior. And here's another newsflash. Most of our nature is a habitual. So think about the habitual patterns you have in your life and where do those come from? Most of us get up at the same time every day. Maybe it's on the weekends we sleep in, but that's still a habitual pattern too. Most of us, I know me, this is one of my habits, is the first thing I do when I get up is I turn on the coffee pot and make myself a cup of coffee. And if you ever try to get rid of that habit for me, I wouldn't be too happy of an individual. So we go through life with habits constantly. And those habits are determining our behavior. But the real question is, where do the habits come from? And the habits come from others. Now, this is the crazy part, because we think our habits come from us, but really that's not the truth. And this picture is of a family that's passed on from generation to generation. And the article came from the grandparents actually influence behavior more than our parents. That was the argument of this article. And so our paradigm is a collection of habits that we have. But these are subconscious habits that we don't know what controls those. And most of those habits are passed on from different generations. I'll give you an example. So when I was a kid, I watched my dad. He had very active hands. And so he fidgeted a lot. And he was touching his nose and he was touching his face. And no offense, Dad, if you're watching this, I love you, but it drove me nuts. I said, well, why does he always touch his face? I don't get that. But the crazy part is now I look, and even though I can't stand doing that, I do that all the time. This is actually one of the habits I'm trying to change. And so we do things habitually that we never really had conscious decision of. And I'm going to talk to you about how that happens. And that happens because when we're babies, our mind is open. So we have a subconscious mind, but we can't control our thoughts yet. And so all of this information comes into our subconscious when we're little. And that subconscious is actually what determines what we do in life. So the key to permanent change is to start to change the paradigm. But what most people do is they focus on behavior. So if I want to be healthy, I'm going to change my behavior. I'm going to eat different. I'm going to do these things. But if our paradigm is set up in a way that we're not going to naturally be inclined to be more healthy, I can guarantee you that those behaviors over time won't last. You might get short-term results, but you won't get long-term results. Because the paradigm, our set of behaviors, how we view ourselves, determines the behavior which determines the results. You may have heard this if you've ever studied work done by MIT and systems thinking. The structure of anything determines or influences the behavior which determines the results. The paradigm here, the nature of our subconscious mind, is actually what determines the behavior and ultimately determines the results. So in order for us to get lasting permanent change, we need to change our paradigm. Now I want you to think about the things that you've done in the past where you haven't gotten the results you wanted. And I'm going to ask you, did you try to change the underlying structure, or did you try to change the behavior? Because if you change the behavior, I can guarantee you that's why you didn't get the results changed. And so the whole idea of thinking in the results and the coaching program is to get you to start to understand first what your paradigm is, and then to begin to change the paradigm to get the results you want. I think this is a great picture and a great analogy of what I'm trying to say here. We only see a very small fraction of what's going on in our mind. And that tip of the iceberg is usually the results. Now, if we look through the water, we might be able to see our conscious mind a little bit. It might be a reflective image. It might be hard to see, but we can see that. But way down deep is our subconscious. And our subconscious is ultimately what determines whether we're happy in our life, whether we're making the money we want to make, whether our job is fulfilling for us, whether our relationships are fulfilling. All of these things are based on our subconscious mind, but nobody talks about this. Okay? So when we talked about having a crystal clear picture of what's going on here, Dr. Thurman Fleet in the 1930s, he was in the healing arts, and he said one of the main reasons that people have such a hard time changing is because we don't have a clear idea of what our mind looks like. And so he created the stick person that you see on the left, and Bob Proctor said that this was the most important piece of information he's ever learned. And what he learned was that we have two parts to our mind, and our mind is not our brain. Our mind is an activity. Our mind is something much larger than our brain. But we have a conscious mind, which is our thinking mind. And this is the part of our mind which we focus so much on. And this is what school focuses on, getting information in our conscious mind. But there's another part of our mind, our subconscious mind, and this is where our paradigm resides. And until we begin to understand our subconscious mind and our paradigms, we're never going to be able to create lasting change. And so what Dr. Thurman Fleet discovered was that our subconscious mind creates and controls what our body does. And so you see the subconscious mind is connected to the body. So our thoughts subconsciously dictate the actions we take, and those actions create the results we get in life. But see, this is why most people end up screwing up, or they don't get the change they want. They focus so much on the conscious mind, getting more information, getting more information, getting more information. But until that information resonates with what's going on in our subconscious mind, the results will never happen. So I want to go through this because this is what's so detrimental about the way that school gives us knowledge. So school gave us knowledge about so many different things, but they never gave us knowledge on paradigms and how to alter them. So therefore, we frequently don't do what we know how to do. And we get more information and more information and more information, but we never get the results we want. And I can guarantee you that causes confusion and frustration. That's why a lot of people are frustrated in life. That's why we have a lot of PhDs out there. And I know this because I was a product of this. So let me give you a sample story. So when I graduated from undergrad, that was 2008, and I lived in Michigan. And that was when the economy completely recessed. And it was the Great Recession, or the Second Great Depression. There were no jobs. So I went to school for all of high school, all of middle school, all of elementary school. Then I went and got a 4-year degree in biology. And then I was going to go get another 4-year degree in dental school, but there were no jobs. And so I wasn't the only one. Now dentists are usually in demand, but most people came out, they had a tremendous amount of knowledge, but they couldn't do any of it. And this created some serious confusion and frustration because now a lot of people had school debt, but they had no way to pay it back. But it's more fundamental than that. Because when I went through the Thinking and Results program, I said, I have been trained and I have been in school for almost my entire life. And I never got this information. I learned how to fix teeth. I learned about genetics. I learned about biochemistry. I learned about everything under the sun when it came to science. But I didn't understand the nature of my mind and why I wasn't getting the results I wanted in my life. And so this is why Dr. Fleet's information is so valuable. So school, at a very early age, our whole society, our whole culture, focuses itself on the conscious mind. Bringing in more information, more information, more information. And we think by osmosis, getting more information is going to help you get what you want. Now, I'm not saying information isn't valuable, because you need information, you need knowledge, but you need to be able to apply the knowledge in a specific way to help you get a result that you want. So when you go from biology to history to English to sociology to politics, none of those things are related, and none of those things probably are going to apply to how you're going to make a living or how are you going to make your highest point of contribution in society. So we think that all this knowledge is going to help us get the results, but that's not the truth. What ultimately determines the results we get is the paradigm. So you can look at people that have a high level of education, but they're not making it happen in the world. Nothing's happening, and they wonder why. But then you can also go to high school dropouts that made tremendous results, and you go, how did that happen? You know, if you look at some of the greatest inventors, Thomas Edison, he never had a formal education. Henry Ford never had a formal education. Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of college. But yet these people created massive results and massive improvements in the world that we see today. They operate on a different paradigm than most. They expected success. Edison failed 10,000 times in creating the light bulb, but he didn't let that deter him because he knew that light bulb was going to be created. He functions from a different paradigm than most people function. Most people, if they fail one time, they say, well, that didn't give me the result I want, I'm never going to do it again. And so they never stick with something long enough to get them a result. But some people do stick long enough to try to get a result, but the problem is their paradigm is in direct contradiction to their conscious mind. And when your subconscious mind and your conscious mind are at war with each other, you're never going to get the result you want. So in order to change the results in life, to get new results, you need to form a new paradigm. Now the real question is, how do you do that? And there are methods. There's two ways to change your paradigm. One is through an emotional impact. Now the problem with an emotional impact is A, it's very rare, and B, it's mostly negative. 9/11 was an emotional impact. I mean, most people know exactly where they were and what they were doing when 9/11 happened. But 9/11 wasn't a positive thing. The other way to change a paradigm is through constant spaced repetition of learning. And that's what the Thinking in a Results program is all about. How you can get the information in a way that allows you to start to take those habits that aren't effective for you and create new habits that are effective. And by doing that, you begin to change your level of thinking. And when you begin to change your level of thinking on a subconscious level, you will begin to see such profound changes that you'll go, why did I not do this sooner? Okay. I want to look at a common paradigm that most have. And it's in regards to how we make money. Bob Proctor talks about the 3 income earning strategies, and I want to go over each one. Okay. Most of us, most of the population, 96% of us, fall into what I consider an M1 strategy. Now, I was in an M1 strategy. And in many respects, I still am. And I'm working on developing a different strategy. But most people focus on an M1 strategy. And what they do is they trade their time for money. And so you go from your 9 to 5 job and you make money. And if you make enough money, you're going to retire. That's the theory. But there's an inherent limit in the M1 strategy, and we can all see that, you guys watching this. You only have so much time, and you can only make so much money if you're trading your time for money. And so doctors, physicians, lawyers, most do this. Now, they may make more money than somebody that isn't a doctor, physician, or lawyer, but it's still the same principle. You reach a point where that's called saturation. You can only work so much. So you can only make so much money. Now, I'm not here to talk about the only reason Thinking in the Results exists is to help you make more money, but a lot of people, if they had the choice, would love to make more money. And they love to do more of what they want to do, and they like to do it with people they want to do it with. And I will tell you, if you stay on an M1 strategy long enough, it's very hard for you to get those 3 things. Now, what some people do is they move up to what I call an M2 strategy. Now, this is what 3% of the population does, and you may know this as an investment. And with investments, what you're doing is you're trading your money for more money. You're delaying what the money you currently have will get you to make something greater in return by getting more money. Now, this is a much better strategy than M1 because you don't have to physically be there making money. The problem is most people can't even invest because they don't have enough money to invest. Now, where the real money is made is what we consider an M3 strategy. Now, this is what the really wealthy top 1% of people do. And what they do, and this accounts for 96% of the wealth, what they do is they multiply their time that they have available by creating what are called multiple streams of income, or MSIs. So think of it this way. Really successful people, Warren Buffett, for example, is a billionaire. Warren Buffett has many investments, but he has many different companies that he operates out of. Now, he doesn't have to physically be there in order to make money. He makes as much money or probably more money sleeping than he does when he's awake. Mark Cuban does the same thing. Richard Branson does it. Richard Branson and Virgin, the Virgin group of companies, there are hundreds of Virgin companies. So Richard Branson isn't directly involved with all of those companies, but they all help him make money. So really successful people do this. And this is the key. If you were to say, and a lot of people will say this, we have an income inequality problem in the United States. And while that might be completely the truth, if we were to take all of the income and all of the wealth and evenly distribute it amongst everybody, I can guarantee you in a very short period of time, the people that had learned how to develop an M3 strategy would have all the money again. And the reason this happens is because we don't learn the M3 strategy in school. We learn the M1 strategy in school. We're told, go get a job, make your money, and go retire. But the really successful people have discovered that the M3 strategy is by far the best way to accumulate wealth and earn money. Now, I want you to think about this. How many of you watching this video have an M3 strategy? So what I want you to do is get out of your comfort zone. And by getting out of your comfort zone, you will start to create different goals for yourself. And what you'll start to do is get out of setting A and B type goals. So A type goals are goals you know how to do. And I will tell you, when you set an A type goal, it's not really a goal because it doesn't help you grow. Now, A type goals are like, if I have a new Mazda and I want to buy a new Mazda, that's not a goal. It's something I already know how to do. But what most people do is they focus on what I call B type goals. Now, B type goals are goals that you think you can do. Now, B type goals are, if everything breaks my way and I can do X, Y, and Z, I'll probably get to my goal. Well, I'm going to tell you that there's absolutely no inspiration in doing that. Now, where the real growth occurs, where the real stretching grows, is when you set what I call a C-type goal. So Bob Proctor lays this out, an A and a B and a C-type goal. When you set a C-type goal, you have no idea how you're going to get it, but you know you will get it. You don't need to know the how, because the how destroys the goal. You only need to know that you're capable and you're willing of getting it, and that it becomes a reality. So one of the first things we do in Think and Grow Rich is really stretch your ability to form C-type goals, because those are where the growth, that's where the magic happens. Okay. So as we wrap up today, what I want you to do is understand that in order for you to change your subconscious, you have to be willing and able to do that. And I can tell you, you are both able, because we have almost infinite potential, and willing. If you have the will, you have the dedication, the commitment, you can change your paradigm. How do we change that? We become aware of how to change it. You took the first step today by being on this webinar, on this video. So you're already aware that you can change your paradigm. Now you have to have a process to do that. And so Steve Jobs wrote a really good quote, and I want you to read it. He said, for the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were my last day in life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? And if the answer's been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. I want you to ask yourself that question. And if the answer is no for too many days in your life, you need a change. But you're not going to change by fighting the existing reality. You need to change and build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. You trying to fight your subconscious when you don't know how to fight it is never going to work. Thinking into Results is a program to help you change your paradigm. How does it work? So if you have questions about this, I encourage you to call me. I encourage you to send me an email so we can discuss it more. But basically, it's a series of 12 DVDs. And there's lessons on these 12 DVDs, and you spend 2 weeks with each DVD. And you start to go through a workbook that allows you to take the changes that you're making and apply them to your daily life. If you just listen to the information and don't apply it, it's never going to work for you. And you spend time with a 1 to 1.5 hour coaching call with me every 2 weeks. And we go through a 24-week period of intensive growth. You got to make a commitment here. And it works for individuals, small groups, and businesses alike. And we begin to change your paradigm in the way that you view the world. And I'm telling you, when you do that, things start to happen in your life you never would have expected. So I ask you to make a decision. And you've probably already made a decision. If this resonates with you and it makes sense, I encourage you to take the next step, which would be talk to me further. Now, if you talk to your friends or family members, they're going to be operating from a paradigm that might be different from yours right now. And they may say, well, you've tried that before in the past. It doesn't work. But I'm telling you, that level of thinking will never get you what you want. Because the results you're getting in your life right now are due to your level of thinking. And the only way to change your results is to change your thinking. Change the things that you want. So if you're ready to transform your life, I want you to contact me via schluentzsuccesscoaching@gmail.com to set up a 30-minute personalized coaching call. And we'll talk together and I'll see if this program is right for you. It's got to be right for you. And if it's not right for you, I don't want you to waste your time, energy, and money going through something that won't change your life. And we're developing a website right now that should be up so shortly, and it's going to be such an amazing website to help get you more information. But for right now, I just highly encourage you to contact me at schluentzsuccesscoaching@gmail.com so we can set up another time to talk one-on-one and see if this is